No. Crazy people are destroying the trans community, featuring Brianna Wu, Brad Polumbo. And we've got the LGBT community is facing massive backlash right now, but moderate trans woman? Brianna Wu wants to reclaim the trans community from the insane radicals who are taking it off a cliff. Insane radicals. Listen, you can't really properly block people anymore, should I say. Here's my badge of honor. Here we go. She's talking about progressives giving her a hard time about taking her husband's last name. Who cares? Like, this is supposedly the normal trans person. Like, that's fair enough. I think I get that. Like, another thing about her husband's last name. Trauma dumping about a family. Shitting on Anna Kasparian. She goes insane over, like, Israel, Palestine and shit like that as well. I don't think she's a moderate. She's the punching bag for every random nutcase online. She's the one making trans sane, though. Right? Photos going around from years ago, blah, blah, blah. Very obsessed with showing off what she looks like now that she's had a million surgeries, which the average trans person does not have the money for. So they just have to be ugly, and she gets to stand above all of us. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Maybe I should read one of them in Brianna's voice. Brianna just admitted they wanted to prescribe puberty blockers to create more fuckable trans men. Oh, did she? I wish people could understand that we don't want to transition to be sexually appealing. I transitioned because pretending to be a man, even though I am, was killing me and would have led to my suicide. There we go. Do I need to explain any further? Anyway, here's moderate trans woman Brianna Wu.
Made it so you, Brad, could go down tomorrow in California, check a box on the driver's license form, declare yourself female, no hormones, no surgery, nothing, and you've got every legal right in the world to walk into a women's locker room.
Oh, thank you. I basically just talk like Jeffrey Marsh, but it's Brianna instead.
Flop your dick around, and if anyone complains, they get kicked out. And that is the insanity that progressive trans people have brought us to. So someone's got to turn this around.
Bree, thanks for coming on the show.
It's such an honor. I'm such a huge fan of you on Twitter. I didn't know.
Oh, it's Bree. Here we go. Oh, thank you. It's just my Jeffrey Marsh voice, though. Because they sound identical to me.
Right-wing gays were so cool. So,
hey, kids.
Thank you.
It's a brave new world. When I came out, all the right-wing gays were like 40-year-old Republican men that were closet queens holding secret orgies at Ole Miss. So I guess times have changed.
They certainly have. So I've been following you with interest lately because you've been doing kind of a media tour and making a lot of waves, speaking out as a Democrat and a Democratic strategist. And as a
He's falling for it, isn't he? I quite like Brad Polumbo in general. I don't agree with everything he says, but I have a feeling he's falling for this, unfortunately.
Prominent trans woman about where you think Democrats and the progressive movement have gone astray on these issues. So we saw this being a huge issue, an outsized issue, really, compared to probably what it should be in the 2024 election. But it was a losing issue, it seems, for Democrats. What do you think happened? How did we get here, and what went wrong?
So specifically on the trans issue, it's really straightforward, Brad. I came out 20 years ago. And I wanted to be a woman, and I wanted to get married, and I want my life to be about being trans. So I did what a lot of people did 20 years ago. I transitioned, and I went on with my life as best as I could. And that doesn't mean, like, every once in a while people didn't, like, figure out I was trans. It just meant, like, as I was going through my career, I shouldn't talk about it. I just didn't want it to be the focus of who I was or my public presence, which sounded good. But the problem is now the literal lunatics are in charge of trans rights. They are crazy. They have some of the stupidest ideas you've ever seen, and it just keeps spiraling into more and more and more insanity. And Brad, when I came out, just to tell you how much things have changed, when I came out 20 years ago, the idea of vaginoplasty and FFS being covered by insurance was a pipe dream. Like, none of us could have dreamed.
That's facial feminization surgery.
Feminization. I never dreamed I'd be able to get married to a man and have it be legal, which it is. So like from so many ways, the trans rights movement is from the way, like the old school way, got us everything we ever dreamed of. And
the way that we talk about facial feminization surgery, the way that we like glorify it. Do you think if like women started talking about plastic surgery this way, that it would go down well?
And now this group of radicals is just completely tearing it up. And I think the best example of stupid policy happened in California. So for them to accommodate non-binary people, they made it so you, Brad, could go down tomorrow in California, check a box on the driver's license form, declare yourself female, no hormones, no surgery, nothing. And you've got every legal right in the world to walk into a women's locker room, flop your dick around. If anyone complains, they get kicked out. And that is the insanity that progressive trans people have brought us to. So someone's got to turn this around.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, because I feel like it's so funny, because you might relate to this, ironically enough. I have simultaneously been attacked over the years for being transphobic. I'll never forget. I was kicked off a gay men's soccer league, excommunicated.
Really? Fuck off, Brianna.
In Washington, D.C. with all the like hyper woke.
Is Brianna seriously going to act like she doesn't ever like demonize conservatives? I could be wrong.
Gays, because they said that my participation, because I had spoken out about minors transitioning and being very concerned about that, they said my participation in the club made hypothetical future transgender members, there weren't any, to be clear, unsafe. Even though, of course, one, my opinions weren't that crazy, and I always communicate them respectfully. And two, I wasn't talking about them at soccer practice. Yeah. But so I've encountered that side of the movement that you just spoke about. But then I've also gotten attacked as, you know, a pro-trans woke liberal by kind of a lot of the far right types as of late, because I still, and I always have, and I always will, defended the rights of trans adults to live their best lives to not be discriminated against. Even today, I see the Republican member of Congress, Nancy Mace, who I used to like, using slurs to talk about trans people, just openly, in her videos from her congressional office. And I'm like, something has really gone astray here.
I thought that was base. I don't care. And I'm actually trans, so screw you, Brad. I'm joking.
Handed her everything she ever needed. Like, the American people used to be with us on bathroom stuff, you know? And like, look, I think like when I go into a bathroom, no one cares, right? This is just not an issue for most people. But, you know, the truth is, by pushing this issue further and further and further and further and further and further.
All right, I've needed the toilet. I've needed the toilet for like God knows how long. I will be back in like a minute. It's actually getting really quite cold in here.
There is a sentiment now with normal people where Nancy Mace has a constituency on this stuff. The trans community I transitioned with 20 years ago, we could tell a sister, like, hey, I'm sorry, you're not far enough into electrolysis. Don't use the ladies yet. You need to get your passing skills better so you don't create a scene. That's the old school trans community that took some values I think you can appreciate as a center-right gay guy, which is some personal responsibility. Like, if you're a trans woman, you should care about if you're freaking other women out. Like, that's a core rule of women-only spaces. And this new movement just utterly does not give a shit, Brad.
Oh, hi, Jody. Hope you're good.
So, like, I understand, like, don't get me wrong, I don't like Nancy Mace's, like, opinions on this, but we are creating the Nancy Maces out there by giving them everything they need to destroy us.
Yeah, I think we're living through a pendulum swing, right? Yeah. Because the wave of trans activism...
It's very possible it's actually going to be quite boring, because I probably agree with them on a decent amount of stuff. The way I feel about Brianna Wu is that she says the right things on some of this stuff, but she's not bringing sanity like she pretends she is.
Went so far in the opposite direction that now it's swinging back to the opposite extreme, and we're seeing a lot of this backlash. And we can talk more about the bathroom bills, but I think those go too far and are unnecessary and divisive. But I want us to land somewhere back in this middle. But the trans activists really have taken us off this cliff. I want to know from you, when about did this start? Because I have an idea in my mind when I remember it changing.
Am I doing a face? I can't tell.
But I want to know for you, because the old school transsexuals that you talk about really are the ones who blended in, who most people didn't have a problem with, were going about their lives, but the new activists...
You're doing the philosophy tube thing, like the mouth being on one side slightly.
It's the trans activists, but a lot of them are also non-binary, which we can talk about, whether that really constitutes being transgender.
And by the way, I'm going to sound like the soyest fuck in the world when I say this. I don't think we need to be like throwing non-binaries under the bus when so many trans people, so many so-called cis people have been just as complicit in this shit. Like, they've helped push it, you know?
Gender, they came in. When do you think that happened, and what were the key differences between them and the old school types like yourself?
Okay, so let's go through this one at a time. So one of the really big things that's changed in the trans community, Brad, is where are the fucking trans girls that are into men anymore? I don't understand it. Like, it used to be...
Called out as a fucking transbian. I don't care. I'm a transbian that dates an actual woman, so... Think of that what you will. Actually, maybe there's loads of trans women that are into men.
80% of girls transitioning wanted boyfriends easily. Yeah, like certainly, I'm not out there.
Doesn't that kind of sound a bit like it is like gay conversion, though? Isn't this the kind of thing that someone like Mr. Menno, for example, would complain about?
Dating women, and now all of a sudden I would guess it's like 80% of these girls are trans lesbians, and the amount of behavior in women's face is just like we're causing all kinds of conflict.
Oh, so now we're throwing trans lesbians under the bus. Okay. Listen, like I said, I'm gonna sound a bit soy talking about this kind of shit, but the truth is, it just seems like she wants someone to point at. Like, trans lesbians, they're the problem now. I don't know. I think there's a fucking lot of problems. I think you're one of them, actually, but sure.
Because we feel entitled to these lesbian spaces. And like, so there's something like fundamentally that has changed about the population of trans girls that are transitioning. And I think it's because we have declinical.
I'm not really surprised about Brad talking to Brianna Wu about this kind of thing. Like, he seems like the kind of person that probably would accept trans if it was more reasonable. And Brianna knows how to say the right things, so... By the way, their eyebrows look really similar, have you noticed? Something very similar about those eyebrows, I don't know.
All of the standards here. So when I transitioned, I had to go to a doctor. I had to qualify for gender dysphoria under the DSM-4, which was a much stricter standard than it is today. I urge you, Brad, go look at the standards in the DSM-5 today. I bet for you as a gay man, you would meet 2 of the 6 you need to qualify for a gender dysphoria diagnosis, because it's just pedestrian gender nonconformity. So like what has happened is we have declinicalized every aspect of this and expanded who is trans. So now fetishistic cross-dressers are trans. Now, really femmy homosexual young men, they're called femboys. They're going on HRT today. They trans.
Say they're they, them.
100%. You've got this non-binary project. You've got these trans masks, which are just, natal females that aren't super girly. And
oh, shit. There's definitely a lot of theories about Brianna Wu having a problem with trans men. I'm on the fence, but she definitely says some like weird shit that makes me think I'm not sure about this at all. To be fair, it usually is the transbians that piss me off. Hey, maybe. But do you think Brianna Wu is like, has she got room to talk by talking about like transbians making everything worse? I just don't know about that. I don't know.
And they want to like escape their femininity by claiming this trans identity. So what has happened is the wheels have gone off the movement, and something that's fundamentally healthcare access issue has become this catch-all for every single person in the country that doesn't like fit the stereotypical definition of man or woman. And it's breaking us.
Yeah, it's hard because I often cringe on the right. I hear people who are genuinely like anti-trans say trans people are mentally ill. And I would never put it like that, because that carries a stigma or a negativity. But trans people, at least historically, do and did have a mental condition called gender dysphoria that caused distress and needed alleviating.
Yeah.
And so it was a rare medical phenomenon where we wanted to accommodate people so they could live their best lives peacefully and be happy. It was worked out for them. It didn't really cause issues for a whole lot of other people. But ironically, it seems like the activist crowd has fought to demedicalize this issue at their own peril, because the medicalization is kind of what made it legitimate. Like, this is a real thing people need treatment for. We should, the same way we respect people who have ADHD and might need.
Listen to all the stuff they're saying. I'm not actually a fucking trans medicalist. I don't think that taking hormones and shit makes you a trans woman. The only thing I really think is that I just don't think you can call yourself trans and therefore you're trans. There has to be some kind of either intention or you're doing certain steps. But I really don't think any of this is like real. Do you know what I mean? Like, arguing what is or isn't trans is almost irrelevant at this point.
some accommodations in class to get extra test time. We should accommodate some rare people who experience gender dysphoria. But they say this medicalization is transphobic and that you just are whatever you feel inside. And they've kind of ripped up this old playbook to their own detriment because it became much less legitimate and lost, I think, a lot of public support as a result. Because you end up with somebody just saying they're trans is enough, or just saying you feel like a different gender, or you're a they, them, or I'm a neo pronouns. It just opened up the world. And I think in doing so, lost legitimacy in a lot of people's eyes.
It's also catching a lot of young gay people up in this stuff, right?
But why aren't you just saying, where are all the trans women that like guys? I don't know.
Look, Brad, you're 100% on with this. And
am I like fishing too hard for hypocrisies? I'm not sure.
Look, this isn't like, I understand, like, there's such a tendency to look at the past and to feel like every single thing in the trans rights movement needs to copy things in the past. And like homosexuality being in the DSM as a disorder, I think all of us would agree that is not called for. Gender identity disorder does need to be in the DSM. I had a condition. I'd had it since I was a child. I went to a doctor. I went on hormones. I went to an endocrinologist. I had a plastic surgeon work on my face, and I got better. And I can look at
none of which makes you a woman, by the way.
Those criteria today, Brad, and I don't qualify.
And again, like the glorifying of like the plastic surgery, I just don't feel like, I feel like if women, like a woman did this, that there'd be like backlash, you know what I mean? Wu is allegedly HSTS, but looks AGP and is not happy about it. I have no idea. She's confusing in many ways.
For gender dysphoria. My life, my body, my presentation is 100% in alignment with how I feel. I'm married to a really delightful man. I get called she, her everywhere I go, any room I walk into, and it's great. And I don't consider myself mentally ill anymore. But if you are looking for the public policy of them covering vaginoplasty or FFS or all these other surgeries, I'm sorry, this has to be medicalized. And it is this distance between real public policy and this fantasy progressive world that a lot of people are living in. It's just killing our whole movement.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder as well if it's the substance of the issues, right? So it's non-binary, it's delegitimizing, demedicalizing the trans, right? So it's non-binary, it's delegitimizing, demedicalizing.
What is she doing? I'm sorry, I should be listening, but happiness through surgery is unhealthy. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I swear, there's a lot of people, if you talk about, like, a woman getting plastic surgery, a lot of people will say that they don't think it's necessary and that people shouldn't feel the need to change their looks and stuff. But suddenly when it's trans people, it's glorified. It's very unfeminist, I have to say.
Of the issues, right? So it's non-binary, it's delegitimizing, demedicalizing.
What is she doing? I'm so confused.
Of the issues, right? So it's non-binary, it's delegitimizing.
Lipstick on the teeth, I can't tell.
Demedicalizing the trans experience and so much more. A callous approach towards women's spaces, women's.
If Roxy Tickle had vaginoplasty, according to Brianna, then he's true trans, even though he clearly presents an old geezer. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so like, what are these like facial tics? I'm so confused. I've never seen this before. Anyway, it's all right. I'm supposed to be being nice and not body shaming or Tourette's shaming, whatever. The condition appears not to have been healed anyway. Yeah, this is what I was worried about, becoming of myself, just going down this fucking hole of surgery after surgery, filters, like voice changes and stuff, instead of just being honest and being myself. Because I always knew where I came from. I called myself a woman. I still knew I wasn't one, ultimately. I just don't call myself a woman anymore.
Towards other things, but I also think it's actually not just the substance, but also the kind of tone and tenor of the trans activism being incredibly just aggressive and hostile towards people that disagree with you.
She's doing an active listening. I'm sorry, probably no one finds that funny but me, but I don't care.
Kind of contrast to the successful part of the gay rights movement that was like, let us get married, we're just like you. They celebrated people who went from opposing gay marriage to supporting it, right? Like Obama, Biden flipped on this and were celebrated for it. Now it's like, oh, well, you might be pro-trans now, but there's tweets from you in high school where you used the T slur. And I can't help but just feel like, just approach-wise, the trans movement is one of the most radically self-destructive activist movements I've ever seen. It even makes people like me feel like I'm in opposition to it, even though I'm...
Matthews, Jesus. The filter. Yeah, she uses a lot of filters. You get some weird stuff. But like the facial tics, though, I'm so confused about. Like the kind of... Like, why is she doing that?
I'm basically pro-trans. Like,
so get real with me, Brad.
There's a video on Dollcast's channel called Richard Hanania with 4 trans girls. You a trans girl? You look about 70, but sure.
Like, I'm just going to make a guess here, because I hope we'll become really good friends, but I'm just going to make a guess about you. You probably have had many moments in the last 5 years, I'm guessing, where you've said something and some trans person is showing up in your mentions and they are tone policing you. And
well, the thing is, I don't know how much he knows about Brianna Wu. And I think that because she says the right things, I think he's being taken in by it. It worked on me for a while as well. I didn't always have a dislike for Brianna Wu. That kind of came over time.
And bringing out the moralization, and even you as a gay man, because I think if you and I sat down and compared our childhood, we'd find a lot in common, right? We're different, but there's a lot there, and you just probably understand being born differently, right? So even you as a gay man, I bet there have been 1,000 moments over the last 5 years that you've just gone like, can you just act normal for 5 minutes? Is that it?
Absolutely. But then you get accused of respectability politics. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point, actually. We want people to respect us and our rights.
You know, this is something I've thought about so much, but I would love your opinion on this. This is really getting real with you. When I look at the trans girls I know that have integrated and socialized and have gone on to have partners and jobs, just like the bare minimum for a successful life, why the hell is it that all of us came from conservative households? Like, I think about this a lot. On my show, Dollcast, all of us came from conservative backgrounds.
Yeah, that's 4 people, but sure.
And all of us took integration very seriously. What I feel is happening.
Like, I'm not from a conservative household, but then she wouldn't want to include me in this shit anyway, because she's not a fan of me. How does Brad keep getting platformed on Piers Morgan? I don't know. A lot of this shit is more who you know than what you know.
Happened is this fringe progressive ideology is setting trans people up for failure. Because when I transitioned, like, there was a document you could read, and it is almost like, look, you have a really serious condition. If you take agency in your life and you go do these steps, start with go to a therapist for 3 months, we can talk about giving you hormones. Get on hormones, go to an endocrinologist, we can look at writing some letters. Like, go get a job, like work for a year full time, we can talk about getting you vaginoplasty. So every single step of this was encouraging you to move deeper into transition and to take some responsibility and to integrate. And that set a lot of us up for success. What is happening today is trans women are women. And you just declare mission success before you even start. So I don't know why we're surprised that so many of the trans girls today don't act like women. It's just setting everyone
What does it mean to act like a woman? I'd love to know that.
up for failure.
It is, and it's kind of...
I wonder if Brianna could answer that question without using herself as an example, bearing in mind what we're looking at is a male person. This person is just as male as I am, just as male as Brad Polumbo is.
Tragic, because the people who are like you are the ones who are bearing the brunt of that backlash most often. And what's unfortunate...
Bruv, come on. Do you not follow her on Twitter? Have you not seen? She bears the brunt. She acts like a fucking freak on Twitter. No offense. Like, this person gives as good as she gets, if not worse. I'm sorry about it. Fuck me. Listen, don't be a mug, Brad. You can do better than this. I don't give that much of a fuck. Like, he seems alright, but I can see why he's getting taken in by Brianna for sure.
Fortunate as well is, and you know, maybe I'm even guilty of this to some extent because I discuss, for example, I just did a whole episode breaking down.
Honestly, like, calling someone a her, like, a lot of it is, partly it's the way they look, and partly it's, like, force of habit. I used to be a lot more, like, respect our pronouns and shit like that, you know?
Down Chase Strangio, the ACLU lawyer advocating for transitioning minors before the Supreme Court. And Chase is like the face of trans activism at the moment. And I guess where I'm going with this is that I know from my personal life, there are trans people all across this country.
The thing is, tapping Brad, he looks like he won't fall apart if you go anywhere near him. She looks like you better not touch her because this will all crumble.
Who are sane, good, decent people with jobs and families who are huge positives to their community, but they're not the ones going on TV to represent the trans community. They're not the ones going viral on TikTok representing the trans community. They're not the ones employed by the alphabet organizations as spokespeople. It's like the radical fringe of the trans community, and this is also true to some extent for the gay community, are like the faces of it. And I feel that they give everyone a bad name because they're so extreme and I think so understandably off-putting to people that people are unfortunately kind of binary black.
Well, it is extremely simple when it comes to trans activism. Trans activists have collectively decided that the way to be activists for trans issues is to make as big of a twat out of yourself as you can and to know nothing about anything and to be brainwashed and groomed by someone older than you, even if you're a child and you end up getting sent off somewhere to throw crickets at people or climb a building.
Or white thinkers, they think, oh, I must be against trans because Chase
Hi, emo goy. Hope you're good.
Strangio is on my TV telling me 2-year-olds know their gender truth, and I'm against that. In reality, it's like you don't have to accept that face value that.
I quite like Jack Jewel. I don't mind Brad Polumbo. I mean, I try and be as forgiving as I can. Like, I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm a terrible person.
Everyone is like that, but it is unfortunately human nature. And I think bad representation for a movement can be a fatal flaw when it comes to actually winning public opinion.
When gay people got the right for gay marriage, plenty of gay men put on khakis and polo shirts and went on daytime TV to just look normal. And who do we have? It's a bunch of deranged lunatics.
Mm-hmm.
No, we have Brianna Wu, obviously. We're fine. Listen, Brianna's here to save all of us.
I had not come out as trans until 3 months ago. And I really wish to God I didn't have to. It's just, I'm a reasonably high profile person. And, I have no fucks to give. I don't no one can fire me for.
No fucks to give. That's what someone who goes on interviews with filters and full face makeup. Go on.
Or just saying the truth about the trans movement. And the problem, Brad, is if you say this stuff, you're a transphobe, you're a right-winger, they'll just discredit you. I've literally spent the last decade working in progressive politics. I ran for Congress as a...
I'm going to go out on a limb and think Jack Diggler is a person that looks like Jack Jewel.
Democrat. My literal job is to raise money for Democrats, and I'm a trans one. They can't go after me with this bullshit. So we've got to have... What I'm asking is every...
No, but if you expose any fucking hypocrisy or lie that she tells, what she will do is block you. Because she can't actually handle criticism very well, is what I tend to find.
Single sane trans person out there, there's no help coming for us. We have to stand up and take back our movement. Because if we don't, this group of frauds is going to make us lose everything.
This group of frauds, what are we? We're still men pretending to be women and women pretending to be men. What else? I don't know. Just the way she puts it, I don't know what it is, man.
For trans women in sports and transitioning natal females, where if you look objectively at their detransition rates, there's no one that could look at this and think FTMs need to be transitioning while they're minors. These are often confused girls, a huge majority of them. So, we've got to change some stuff. And I know you can sense the frustration in me. Yeah. I'm not usually like this, but I'm just really at the end of my rope with this.
But so how has the feedback been for, and I have an inclination of how it's been for you, but from trans people and the trans activists and just online, you've spoken out. I've seen you on Piers Morgan. I've seen you on a bunch of different podcasts and shows. Have you heard from some people quietly agreeing with you? Have you gotten a lot of nasty backlash or a little bit of both? What's the reception been like?
I have probably gotten 300 or 400 emails from normie people going, you changed my mind on trans rights. I've probably had half of the Democrats, the trans people, they're Democrats that work here that aren't really public facing. They're just like the bread and butter trans Democrats working in the background saying, thank God you're finally saying this. I've had members of Congress reach out to me to talk about.
Thank God for Brianna Wu, right? Thank God. Leadership has arrived from the heavens to save us from whatever is happening.
Policy that the alphabet groups are telling them they have to stand by, asking for my opinion about this. I've had very high incoming people that are going to be in government soon reaching out to me to talk about this.
I can't get in the headspace of someone who doesn't know how much this person lies. I wish I could kind of go back in a way, but then I'd probably be like impressed by this shit, and it's not impressive. She says the right things. That's about it.
This stuff. So there is a understanding in the Democratic Party that something has to change, and they are looking for new leadership. And that is what I am standing up to do. We got to change course on this. And the other truth is, the Republicans, you know this, Brad, a lot of Republicans are not bigots. They just, like, the leaders will sometimes get power by being bigoted. But most Republicans, if you give them, like, look, I had a health condition. I went to a doctor. I made some choices. It was good for me. I'm not asking you to do anything. Just let me live my life and go get health care on my own. Most Republicans are fine with that. But that's not our message anymore.
Social engineering, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty obvious what she's lining herself up for. And, if you're someone that criticizes her even a little bit, you're a terrible person.
No, the message now focuses on things like...
Oh, no, sorry, I'm not sounding grateful enough. I'm so glad that this very sane-looking trans woman who totally doesn't act like an utter spurg on Twitter every single day and totally hasn't been lying about her whole life for basically her whole life. I'm so glad she is coming here to save us transes from the terrible, scary non-binaries and the transbians.
Like trans women in women's sports, which I think just is such a tiny issue, but strikes people as so fundamentally unfair and unreasonable that it rubs people the wrong way, even though it's really, in the grand scheme of things, just such a small number of people. But it's just so fundamentally, and part of the problem as well is what people really don't like feeling gaslit about biology. And so Chase Strangio, for example...
Do they not? Because you're allowing it to happen,
tweeted, trans women are biological women because, and basically the argument is because they are women who are also alive and biological or something. Like, I'm like, no, trans women are trans women. And the whole point is that they were born as natal males and they transitioned. So it's like, this, and that's kind
of... But Brianna Wu thinks there's something inside her that makes her female, not male. I can't remember what she was saying about Ray GP, Ray Alex Williams. I can't remember what she was saying about him. And that that was the difference between the two of them. It's difficult to believe that she doesn't believe any of the gender woo anymore. But I don't know. She lies so much, it's hard to know what to take.
Kind of the issue with women's sports when they say like, oh, there's no advantages here, you're all just a bigot when you see Leah Thomas at the podium or something. People don't like, most I think reasonable people are open-minded enough, are willing to make accommodations to treat people with dignity and respect or freedom, but they really don't like being gaslit and told that what you see as the sky is blue, no, it's green. No, it's green. You must say it's green or you're a bigot. And I think a lot of people have just gotten fed up and thrown the baby out with the bathwater in an unfortunate way, but it stems from just the unreasonable nature of a lot of the demands they've made, the meltdown over misgendering, the introduction of pronouns that are like inanimate objects, all these sorts of things that strike people as unreasonable. I mean, you can't make unreasonable demands of people and then be surprised when they say no.
No, of course not. And I have to tell you,
Yeah, probably only took 2 milligrams of estrogen to stay erect. Made some kind of comparison that there's something inside Brianna Wu that is not in Ray. I wish I knew the timestamp or something. I'd look it up. Thing is, trying to like track all these fucking lies and stuff, it's so hard. Like, maybe it's easy if you're used to like researching this shit, but I'm not so much myself,
to think it was like, this is just a right-wing trope, right? That trans women don't know that they're biological males, right? This is just a right-wing talking point. People don't really think this. Don't know that they're biological males, right? This is just a right-wing talking point. People don't really think this. But then when I came out and started arguing with people about this, it's like, no, there are a lot of trans women that actually think they're biological women. And I'm like, look, I personally believe something happened to me in the womb that just, my brain went haywire. I personally believe something happened to actually think they're biological women. And I'm like, look, I personally believe something happened to me in the womb that just my brain went haywire. There are studies, I can show you a 2018 study that shows trans women, we have long sequences of protein receptors in our genes that we share in common that affect how testosterone and estrogen affects us, which personally is why I think most trans women look like me, like we're scrawny, gawky, like men, testosterone.
Didn't she used to be fat? Wasn't she a fat guy at one point? This is very, very like, I don't know, we're still just making stuff up to pretend that somehow we're more real than someone else. I don't know. I've grown to reject a lot of the transmed stuff. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if you are one.
Obviously agreed with you more than me. And I think there's probably a genetic basis for what I'm going through. But I think it's just silly to pretend that we don't have to undergo HRT or facial feminization surgery, right? Just be honest about what we are. I just don't understand it.
So let's, to kind of close out our conversation a little bit, some of my audience is very mixed, and some of them are, at this point, I would say, effectively anti-trans.
Not with the silent G, no, that's someone else. We're not talking about, who do I want to slander right now? We're not talking about Alec Gunter right now.
They support the bathroom bills. They think, I was open-minded, but this has gone too far. We've got to go again.
Where trans levels can be measured in their proteins? Maybe. This game has pronouns. Pronouns!
Against all of it. And that's not where I'm at, but I hear them. Make your case to them that they don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. They don't need bathroom bills. They don't need to strictly crack down and ban transitions for adults.
Sarah, they actually tell you, fuck, what was I going to say? They actually tell you don't really need to dilate if you're getting railed regularly. But then I don't know how big he is, so. Have I gone full gender critical? I probably have. I probably did a while ago, to be honest. You think he believes what she's saying? Yeah, I mean, I think when you're interviewing someone, you're going to be open-minded to what they're saying, you know what I mean? So I guess he probably does. I doubt he knows any better. Well, I'm not sure.
Or anything like this. They just need to have a sensible middle-of-the-road position on this.
Because the problem is she says the right things. She's quite manipulative. But if you don't know this person's history, it's kind of difficult. And I felt the same way. I was kind of brought in. When she started, there was a few Chud Logic videos that she started appearing in that I think he was either on panels or reacting to panels or something. And at first it was who is this? They sound actually kind of intelligent for once. It's Brianna Wu. I knew who that was already. But yeah, I don't know. Some people try to manipulate the world, and it hasn't worked so far, but maybe this time will be a charm. I don't know.
This stuff, make that case for them to try to convince them not to go down that road.
So, Brent, can we, to answer this, can I just kind of back up for a minute and tell you the story and why I transitioned? So, I was 3. I really understood something was
when I transitioned. So when I was 3, what?
Really, really deeply wrong with me. And
you knew that at 3, okay.
It started growing more and more.
I think she really wants to believe it's not all in mind, but somehow a physiological condition buried in her. Yeah, I agree.
More serious. And we would be separated by gender.
And we're you knew this when you were 3 and you remember this clearly? Okay, sure, bro.
When we were in kindergarten, I would just feel overwhelming shame, right? And, there was a sense, I never have any memory of not feeling as strongly as possible that I was supposed to be a girl. And every time growing up, I would talk to people or behave in a way that felt natural to me.
He's being manipulated so much. This is what the story shit is all about. It's about manipulating people. And listen, I don't know if anyone here has watched her having that confrontation with Queeman. But she would answer every question going on these fucking monologues and muting him and stuff. And it was so obviously not working on him. And it was bizarre watching how flustered she gets. But I mean, an interview like this, I don't know that I blame Brad really. But she's so manipulative.
Just got called, I don't know.
Yeah, self-mythologization. Yes, very true.
if I can use the F slur on here, but like that might have well been my name growing up. And, you know, like I remember being very, very young, and I was
the glass in Wu's glasses. I can't see any, but I don't know for a fact there isn't.
in so much pain. And I grew up in a religious right family, and I remember like thinking if I could kill myself.
Jesus fucking Christ, why? I was going to say something like, I'm more concerned about whether there's any flesh left in her face because it's all plastic. And she talks about fucking killing herself. Here's the thing. Miss fucking sane Brianna Wu. Why don't we stop using trans and suicide in the same sentence? Why don't we stop talking about fucking suicide constantly? No wonder there's this supposed fucking epidemic of these kids killing themselves, which isn't even really true. But like, Jesus Christ.
So much pain. And I grew up in a religious right family, and I remember like thinking if I could kill myself, I would be reincarnated. I could be a girl in heaven. And I'm just like sticking this thing in a light socket, trying to electrocute myself to death and hold on.
Like, is any of this true? Who fucking knows? But it's working, and that's all that matters. Like, I could make up all sorts of stories about when I was 3.
Just long enough to be free. It was so painful. And you know, my childhood growing up, like every part of it was just hiding who I was, what I was interested in, how I wanted to speak. Like I would literally close my hands behind my back so I wouldn't let hand gestures out. Like I spoke in a monotone because I sounded like a valley girl if I didn't. Like this is just what I am. And I tried as hard as possible to live as a man. It nearly killed me. I was 19 with a full-on drug addiction.
Have you ever watched Buck Angel? Yeah, he's all right. I haven't watched him in a while. I don't try and watch people like Buck Angel because they're kind of doing their own commentary on stuff that they're watching, which is kind of what I do. I'd rather just watch the original. But I quite like his videos.
Because, like, to try to get this need to be a woman out of my head, I would go do every single drug I could get my hands on. So
yeah, anything not to talk to a therapist about it and try and get a handle on it, right?
Yeah, by 24, I was a drug addicted shut-in, and you know, finally I got the courage to transition, and my life just takes off. HRT, instantly. Depression, gone. Work
Oh my God, this is not... Listen, I'm not saying she's lying because I don't know, but transitioning very rarely fixes other stuff. Like, you might feel a bit happier within yourself. You're not generally going to lose all the shit that's wrong with you. You knew when she was 20. My take is that no one knows that they're trans. They just believe they are. I'm uncomfortable. There's not much left. We'll watch the whole thing for posterity, whatever that means.
Through the roof. In 5 years, I'm a national figure. I'm married. I've got a job. I'm
a national figure. Oh yeah, that national figure, Brianna Wu.
Like taking resources from the state from being unemployed. I've created over 200 jobs over my career.
By the way, if you like the stream, you should like the stream and check the links in my description. You can support the stream in various ways. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know. This is breaking my spirit a little bit.
So, you know, there's something that happened to me, and I know it's weird for you. It is so hard to accept yourself, but it's like, this is just what I am. So I am asking everyone in your audience, just let people like me live our lives. Let us marry who we want to. Let us dress like, ideally, you're not even going to notice us as we go through life. Yeah, like, that's all I'm asking is the same leeway you have for gay people to just what they do in the bedroom is their business. Just give that to us.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that respect.
It's not about saying anything. It's just about getting this guy on board, and it seems to be working. So hey, don't you love the world?
Respect is a two-way street, and people like you respect women, respect their spaces, want to blend in, don't want to cause problems, respect people, don't want to trample on their rights. Too many of the trans activists are demanding respect, but treating everybody else with
randomly shits on smaller YouTubers in a podcast which has less subscribers than I do.
conformity and contempt, or demands for conformity and contempt if you don't comply, and cancellations, and trying to micromanage what language people use. And I just worry, I really do, that we're going to have to go through a backlash over the next few years, and hopefully things will even out in the long run and get somewhere sensible. But they overplayed their hand. You can go back and find me in 2017, 2018 saying this is going to cause a backlash, but we're seeing it in the polls. We're seeing it in our politics. And my call for people is just to maintain the nuance, to see that you can oppose excesses without going all the way to the opposite extreme. That you can leave space for people to live differently from you, even if you don't fully understand them or they're just so different from you. Because ultimately, I think that's what we all just want, is the freedom to live our best lives. And that's what I want for my audience. And it's what I openly and 100% want for people like you. So thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, if you want to hear more from Bree, I'll put links to her social media and her podcast.
Bree.
In the description. Let us know what you thought of this conversation. And if you want to hear more about this topic or who I should speak to next about it, let me know all of that in the comments below. And we'll talk again when I'm back from my trip next.
You know, it's really great. The Mary Chew. You should hit her up. I don't have any socials for them, but you should hit them up. Oh, it's good to see you, Tracy Banner.
Week.
All right, let's see if she managed to get any of his audience on side. That person has a fucking Israel flag. They don't count. She loves fucking Israel. Let's be real. It's a problem for a tiny portion of the population. Activists need to take a seat. Blah, 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 blah. There's a point at which any community can be satisfied and declare their fight won. I'd love to see it. Fair enough. But seriously, Brianna is totally correct. And the thing that bothers me the most is that the lesbian and gay community is not only being abused by the activists, but our rights are being threatened because all the normies all put us in the same category because of guilt by association. Is that true? Is that true? The bathroom thing is easy to solve. Unisex family bathrooms are the way to go. That are for single use. I mean, you say it's easy to solve. Obviously, someone has to pay for retrofitting all these bathrooms into these buildings. Is that going to be the owners of the buildings themselves? Is the government going to help with that? That's obviously a fair amount of money, a fair amount of work. But hey, it's an idea, of course. It can also be blah, 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 blah. Fair enough. Everyone is entitled to dignity. I don't think that's true. I don't think everyone's entitled to dignity. I think what you put out into the world, you get back. Maybe it's just because I have never been afforded myself a huge amount of dignity, but I'm not sure. We're living in a timeline where Brianna Wu is the voice of sanity, really? Do you think so? As a very conservative Republican, I've always thought all Democrats are crazy. Yes, because you're in a cult. But now I'm finding sanity in some of them compared to leftist progressive. This is a confusing time to be alive, lol. Well, no, it's not confusing. You were in a cult. And perhaps you're stepping out of it now. Keep it up, Brianna. Please save all of us, including the Democrats who turn out to be sane after all from this madness. Yes, Brianna, please save us transes. Save us transes from the whatever it is we were complaining about. I don't know. I think all this craziness started with Dylan Mulvaney. Well, then you are wrong. Oh my god, okay. As Dave Chappelle asked, to what extent do I have to participate in your self-image? Also, this Brianna person is a chameleon, yes. And has said very problematic things on other podcasts. I'll give examples, come on. Here we go, get some money for chatting with Brianna. Sympathize up to the point because Brianna helped usher this madness. Yep, agree, that's fair enough. Will she ever admit she got a lot of things wrong with Gamergate? She tried to on fucking trigonometry, I guess. Wow. No one deserves doxing harassment where she really screwed up with the gaming community and their issues. Wu was one of the craziest of the Gamergate bad actors. She's either changed her tone or is going for a rebrand. Someone getting pulled in by their childhood story, I have absolutely no idea. Didn't want her life to all be about being trans. Is that true? Is that true? Can't believe I ever bought into the puberty blockers crap. Yeah, same. Listen, we had a local cult HQ pushing all of the bullshit about puberty blockers. I was one of those people. When it got to that point, I was getting quite cynical, and I was like, all of this seems very much too good to be true. And I was right, I guess. Wow, I picked a bad moment to transition. Yeah, but if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can look just like Brianna. Given her past, I never thought I'd ever agree with Brianna Wu. Now I'm happy to see that I'm wrong. I mean about that. Okay, fair enough. Mr. Wu is a hypocrite. Ooh. Bingo. Those of us who watch the horror remember. So she seems to have brought in Brad pretty easily. But it's much more 50-50, you know what I'm saying? Because some people remember. Some people remember. I don't even remember. I don't know fuck all about Gamergate. But I know what she's like. Brianna Wu is one of the crazies. Base. Brianna Wu is the trans voice we need to hear more. A breath of fresh air, okay. Yeah, there we go. Brianna Wu, Brad Polumbo. I think she played him hook, line, and sinker. I didn't play Nicotine 911. I need to show you Nicotine 911.